Um, for 2022, our first meeting is going to be actually the person who won our Ruth Crayer Safety Person of the Year award right before COVID all went down. So he would have been awarded in April of 2019. And unfortunately, because of all the situation, we didn't get to do that fully like we usually would. So obviously, because he won Safety Person of the Year, he's a great example, and we want him to share the knowledge that he has for that. Okay, just some logistics this morning. We're going to be using the chat feature, and I'm going to be relaying that information over to Tom as needed so he can concentrate on his presentation. We are recording, so that'll be included later on when you get your notes. Again, here's the list of our steering committee members. These are dedicated individuals committed to safety in their workplace and everywhere. And without them, this program couldn't be possible. So I really appreciate them. And for all of you who are here today, hi. Just a few of the slides been in here regularly. I just want to make special note of the fact that there are no semi-annual reports due. Those will not be collected when they normally would have for January, being due January 15th of this year. So no reports until further notice. We did talk a little bit about next year, and of course I have to put tentative in front of everything, but we are hoping to be back in person, and you'll see some of the other changes there as well. They're hoping to reinstate the rebate program, and again, they won't be collecting semi-annual reports yet. The attendance incentive, if you're here this morning, you have the opportunity to win $100 in chamber gift certificates. And all you have to do is be here. So congratulations, you have a chance to win. You guys should have all received a pre-registration where I just put everybody into the meeting. So that's just going to be a going forward practice that you will automatically be registered. Again, our meeting schedule through June. You'll see Tom here. Next month is going to be somebody from Dival Safety. He's going to be covering effective communication and how we turn ditch diggers into bridge builders. So I'm excited for that one next month. Again, April 13th, put it on your calendar. It's a Microsoft Teams meeting. And this is BWC, their second mega meeting for this fiscal year, program year, sorry. So that sounds like that'll be a great topic. And without further ado, we have Dean Bidlack this morning, and he is with BWC, and he will be sharing his information with us this morning. Welcome, Dean.
Good morning. Thank you. As you can see, most of us are still working from home. That is changing as we speak. We are able to go out in the field more now. We just have to have verifiable reasons. We don't want to go back and do the same thing we've done in the last 3 years. So our field people are coming back into the field. The main offices are open. They're not fully open until probably March. We thought we had everything in place, and then we got a new variant of the COVID floating around. So that's pushed us back a little bit, but the field people are able to come out in the field to help you. So if you need myself or Joe, Craig, Ben, or Doug, just let us know, give us a call. We're still doing, we're going to do a hybrid model. So we do have the live virtual classes that are still available to any employer out there. And they range from electrical safety to crane rigging to HAZWOPER to the first time people that are doing OSHA record keeping, get it out to those people. We're also doing webinars. So webinars, we have prevention through design. We have 7 habits of highly effective safety teams, record keeping, and just go to the BWC Learning Center to sign up for any of those classes. We are updating our services somewhat on our BWC website. I said somewhat because they haven't made a notation on the safety grant page yet. The regular safety incentive grants are not open at this point in time. They're waiting to on those a little bit. They still have some of the other ones open for the schools, the fire departments, and police. Those are still open, but not the regular safety incentive grants. So we can't file for those. The updated safety services catalog is online. So go to the BWC website, look up safety service catalog, and you'll find a lot of the schedule for the training, videos, things of that nature in there. The Safety Congress is open now that you can sign up for it, get registered for that. It is going to be virtually. It will look a lot different this year because when you first go onto the website, it's going to look like you're walking into a room. You'll take a fork in the road, left or right, and decide on if you're going into the exhibit hall and look through those, or if you're going to go to training classes. So it's going to be a little more interactive, a little more pleasing to the eye. Hopefully it'll make a little more sense. You know, we're all learning as we go, try to make it a little better and a little better. But biggest thing right now is you got to have a good internet connection, folks. So one never knows. Mine is kind of iffy sometimes. So if you have any safety questions for any of us, let us know. We can still go out in the field. We just have to do some verifications now to make sure we're not in conflict with OSHA. We still cannot give COVID interpretation advice. So we're going to refer you to OSHA or the CDC, the Ohio Department of Health. We're not going to get in the middle of any of those differences that might be out there. So we're going to work on the other safety aspects and let the Ohio Department of Health and those folks deal with COVID. So if you have any questions or concern, my number again, same, most of you have it. Well, about 1,500 of you do. 567-204-8913. I said that in jest because when I got my phone and they downloaded all my phone contacts, they found out I had 1,500 phone contacts. So I've talked to a lot of different people over the years. So I thank you much. I'm still here and we're going to be out in the field even more. We don't have the restriction of 1 or 2 a week at this point in time. So as long as we can get out there, we'll get out there. And when we come on site, almost all of us will be wearing masks, even if we're fully vaccinated. So thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you at your workplace in the near future. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Dean. That was a lot of great information. I'll include some of that, a link to the Safety Service Catalog and Safety Congress registration when I send out the email from today's meeting. Thanks, Dean. We really appreciate you, our wealth of knowledge, and obviously 1,500 people probably know that if they're on your contact list. We appreciate you. All right, without further ado, I am going to hand this over to Tom McKee. He works at Ford Amanda Specialties, and as I mentioned at the top of the program, he was our Safety Person of the Year award winner in 2019. So we wanted him to share all his information with us. So I'm going to stop sharing, Tom, and I will turn that over. Then you should be able to start sharing.
All righty. Good morning, everybody. I'm just coming off of the night shift, so you get the best of me right now. Let's see here. See if this, can you guys all see that slideshow and everybody hear me good?
Yes.
Very good. All right. So I'm going to talk about behavior-based safety and kind of what's worked for us. Everybody's at kind of a different level. Everybody's got a different opinion of what safety things work the best. So this is more just let you know what's worked for us. And if you're interested in more, we can talk about more. So I'll probably just quick agenda here. I'll talk about why I'm cool. Why would you care? What's the benefits of BBS? What is BBS? And then kind of give you some of our background and to let you know what's been important for us to keep things safer here. So I'll introduce myself here a little bit. This is why I'm cool. Just a regular guy. Top left there, that's my boy that's down in Nashville. That's my youngest boy, Ben. He's studying music business. Then in the middle there, that's my oldest boy, Cole, and he's going to school. He's getting ready to start lineman school. Actually, he's just finishing up the CDL. And then that's me in a Christmas sweater. The top right, I play in a local band here, Caitlin Schmidt and the Move. So music's a big part of my life and my boys. And then of course I fish, and then do some deer hunting. So just a regular dude. And I kind of, my safety thing is that I just decided the company I work for doesn't have enough money to afford me getting hurt, because I want to be able to do everything I do when I get home. So just like to people to find the things that are important to them, and kind of get them to embrace that thing and not take any risks at work, so they can be safe. So that's kind of where, that was kind of my turning point to get more, kind of make safety cool, I guess, because it lets you do cool things if you don't get hurt. That's a little bit about myself. I've been at FAS for 22 years. It started out as AkzoNobel. Then we had a joint venture with BASF, and then of course Nouryon bought AkzoNobel. So we're a joint venture between Nouryon and BASF. Like I said, I've been here 22 years. 17 years I was on the floor, an operator doing the rotating swing shift. On and off for 10 years, I was the chairperson of the union here. And then I'm still in the union, and I have this safety training facilitator job. So I kind of oversee our training here, oversee the behavior-based safety process, and then anything nobody else wants to do, they kind of seems to be what else I do. So anyhow, why would you care about BBS? For us, it's been a lot more ownership of safety on the floor. You get employee determined solutions. When the employees kind of guide the solutions, you have a lot more buy-in. They take ownership of them. We've seen over 50% of our risks been mitigated on the spot through the observation process. So anytime you can eliminate half your risks off of a pretty inexpensive process, that's a good deal. And then the big things: improved risk recognition, the lowered risk acceptance. So as we go, we still find risks, but it's because we accept less risks. Sustained hazard recognition and mitigation. So it wasn't just a 1 year type thing. It wasn't a 2 year thing. We've sustained it for 5-6 years right now. So that's a really good thing. It also lets us communicate risks and solutions plant wide. It gets people talking about safety on the floor. It isn't a manager comes in, hey, we got to do this, we got to wear PPE. It's actual operators talking to each other. And this whole observation process it facilitates communication of the risk and mitigation, rather than just being one or two people. When it's turned in on an observation form, we can communicate it to the entire plant. A couple other things identify as big and small barriers. A lot of stuff gets talked about on the shop floor that the say the salary guys or the managers aren't in the know of, I guess, because they're not out there all the time. So this is another way to keep your ear down to the ground to see what's going on. And like I said, it's all about being owned by the employees on the shop floor. So that's the culture change part of it. We can talk about the numbers and the money. So far, we've had 14 plus years without an LTI. We've had probably 1.7 million hours now without a recordable. And then you can see some of the first aid near miss numbers down below. Our safety guy, Joe Hutton, gave me these numbers. So if the numbers don't add up, you guys can get a hold of Joe Hutton on that. So those are some numbers there. Some bigger numbers here. If you look at our on the left here, after 5 years without a recordable, you start getting a bigger rebate from BWC. And so we've and starting 2019, we got that, and we're continuing to get that rebate back from them. Seems to be a pretty sizable chunk of change. But that's kind of above me, that part of it there. So you have to talk to the HR lady about that one. But this impacts a lot of things from the shop floor. It impacts, as an operator, it's important to me that the stuff that I want worked on is getting worked on. The things that are making it safer and easier for me to do my job are getting worked on. From an administrative thing, I know nobody wants to see anybody get hurt, but there's also a monetary benefit that's pretty big. Some other things that we've done numbers wise over the last 4 years, we've completed over 300 actions that we've identified and resolved. We've done some pretty big projects involving combustible dust, single point lockout headers, process and warehouse area organization, some big housekeeping initiatives, and then having two big parents in the chemical industry, we get to do a lot of best practice sharing, taking trips to the other sites. We haven't got to do that the last couple of years. Hopefully that happens again soon. But trading best practice, seeing what's working for other places, seeing what's not working for other places. And then also we get to work with the HSE department to overlay the observation data we're collecting versus the near misses, first aids, and at-risks that they're getting turned in through their reporting systems. And then the other aspect that we can really help out with this behavior-based safety is safety during outages, especially with the refinery complex here. There's a lot of contractors coming in that aren't normally working on the site, so this gives us a pretty good opportunity to keep an eye on those guys and kind of set the bar for where we want things to go there. So just as an example, this last outage, 40,000 hours worked. There were multiple level 2 activities, critical lifts, confined space entries, sparking hot works in classified areas, highly hazardous line breaks. With all of those, we only had 5 near misses. And I think we can attribute that we were able to pinpoint the risks and the tasks that we needed to be observing. If you look in the center column, the number of observations, 256 observations over that pretty much a 45-day period. The specialized observations were on the higher risk activities. So you can see we observed 105 risks and were able to take care of 78 of them on the spot. So that's pretty well 78. Could have been near misses, could have been first aids, could have been worse than that. So it really gives you a great opportunity to catch what's going on the floor, to communicate it. And one of the things we did beyond that, we did a morning meeting every day of this shutdown, with the exception of some Sundays, I think, where we were able to report out to all the contractors that were off site what the risks we had been observing were, what the safes we had been observing were, and to reinforce the safe behaviors and to kind of raise the bar on the at-risk behaviors. We were also able to report those at-risk behaviors to the people issuing the permits, to the people doing the observations, to the operators around in the field, so we could all be looking for the same, kind of be calibrated to looking for the same risks. And we were able to see whether it was barricading, not big enough barricading on overhead work, that sort of thing. We were able to see those risks get taken care of, see those decline, and then we were able to hone in on the next things we needed to look at. So there was a lot of really good things we were able to do with that observation. Some of the other best practices, a lot of contractors don't like being watched work, so we were able to, once we observed them, we could give them a token. And then at the end of the week, if they'd been observed twice, they would get ordered lunch. So we did the jalapenos, we did the Lee's famous recipe, QP, that sort of thing. So just some opportunities to recognize the people that were being involved, recognize the people that were cooperating. A couple other things we did. It's not very productive to just keep observing people over and over and over again. So we did have a pretty good schedule to make sure that we weren't hounding people all the time, that sort of thing, to make sure we weren't getting in the way during lifts, during the highly hazardous line breaks, that sort of thing. So there was some orchestration with that, but it was definitely important to get the admin people out in the field and to get the operators on the field, that sort of thing, to keep an eye on things. So some really good benefits there with changing the culture, with the good numbers, with the money that's saved and rebated, and then having the safe maintenance turnarounds. I have a lot more information on maintenance turnarounds. I got a lot more information on all these subjects, but I think everybody's kind of at a different place. But I just wanted to share a little bit about what we're doing here. And if anybody has any great things they're doing at their site, I'd love to hear those. Or if anybody wants to talk further about what we're doing here, definitely get a hold of me. So this is some good information for anybody doing maintenance turnarounds, that sort of thing, or having contractors from off-site work. We saw that 50% of the risks were from evolving conditions. So when you issue the work permit, you walk the job down, you do your last minute risk assessment. Work tends to change, especially as they're tearing apart equipment, as they're doing lifts, as they find they're going to have to be more invasive with the torch, that sort of thing. So this allows us to these observations where we could actually capture things that may have gotten risks that may have gotten missed on the assessment before the job got sent out. It also is educating operators who are usually doing the permitting. It's also educating them for the next time they issue the permit. Hey, we may need to account for this when we issue this permit. So it's all the way around. It helps shape the culture, help shape the things for the contractors. But the top risk we saw were the storage of tools, barricades and warning, proper permitting, additional PPE, working surfaces, and housekeeping. That's kind of what we start our outages with every year. That seems to be the core of the risks that we observe. Just something good to share, I think. So summary of best practices for shutdown observations: always give really specific, safe, and at-risk feedback on the behaviors and conditions. Always communicate the information to everyone daily. So the start of shift meetings were really a big key, both to the contractors and the operators and anybody who's going to be doing observations, to have an idea what they were looking at. The last sentence of that point, the top-down support's imperative. We've had really been super blessed. All of our GMs have done a really good job of coming out on the shop floor. The ops manager, everybody being really involved and not being too busy per se to come out and see what's going on the floor. Always make sure you got a schedule, that you're capturing all the risky behaviors and the non-routine stuff. Let me close this meeting that just popped up. Always reinforce safe behaviors. It's really easy to find things that are wrong. Sometimes it's a bigger challenge to find things that people are doing right. So I encourage you to try to find the safe behaviors that people are doing. That way you can kind of put some sugar in the medicine, I guess. Try to never assign blame. Through the observation process, it's really important to keep people open and having conversations. You're having the talk to try to eliminate the risk, so you don't need to beat them up over it unless it's an ongoing thing. Never miss the opportunity to give detailed conversation in a non-threatening way. So those are some of the stuff we found really worked good on shutdown observations. We've got about 6 years worth of data that we've been doing pretty good observations on. So now that I've told you all the benefits, I'll tell you a little bit. If you don't know what a behavior-based safety is, this is kind of out of our behavior-based policy. We just want to complete quality observations and give feedback of safe and at-risk behaviors. That raises the awareness of existing hazards and increases the safe behaviors. And then it helps us identify and remove barriers to safe work. As a side note, our process was formerly known as CBT. Now called Taking Care of Business. A little cooler name, I think. Yeah. So what's a behavior? Any observable acts. You can look at each of these pictures and see what is observable. Kind of a fun thing. So the idea of an observation is go and watch somebody's behaviors. You do have to recognize that there are conditions that impact your behaviors. That's always important. And that leads us to behaviors are either enabled, difficult, or non-enabled. So if we use earplugs, for that to be enabled, somebody would have to have earplugs right there at the job site. If it was difficult, maybe they got to go back to their truck or they got to go to his tool crib to get the earplugs. And if it's non-enabled, there's just not earplugs available. So we try to find behaviors that are at risk, that behavior is either difficult or not enabled to do safely. And then we try to enable those behaviors. So you can kind of look as you're doing an observation, kind of determine if it's an enabled behavior, then you need to reinforce the cooperation or the following through with it. If it's difficult or not enabled, we want to make it easier for people to work safely. And the keys to success for a behavior-based process. And as a side note, the unions are generally opposed to, I'm a union guy. You don't have to stop listening. But generally behavior-based safety processes don't fly in union environments as well as they could. When I was the chairperson, they asked us to, BSF introduced behavior-based safety to us, and they asked us to ask the union to take it on. And so my thought was, well, we'll take it and we'll make it work for us, as opposed to having it shoved down our throats. But we were actually able to own the process, and it's actually been a good benefit. So there's a couple union shops I talked to in the Nurion side that they kind of do their head button, but as they've worked through things and you work the bugs out, it's more about just being safe. So it doesn't have to be it can be a good process if both sides work together to make it happen. Anyhow, 3 keys to success. You want to recognize the hazards. So the first part of the training is to recognize hazards. If you recognize a hazard, you see the risk there. So you need to change your behavior as a short-term mitigation to the risk. So sometimes it's getting the right habits. If there's a barrier, long-term, you need to remove the barrier to allow people to work safely. So a lot of times it's easiest thing to use as an example is hearing protection. If you're using a hammer, you want to find a way to not use the hammer. Maybe short-term, you got to use a hammer. So you need to put your hearing protection, use your gloves, and use a hammer. Long-term, you need to get rid of the hammer, and you eliminate a lot of the risky behavior. So I said three keys: recognize the hazard, change your behavior. Short-term, long-term, get rid of the barrier. Some examples of that: a wet floor, you put out a wet floor sign, you mop the floor up. Long-term, you fix the roof, repair the leak. High noise area, wear earplugs, supply earplugs at the point of use. Long-term, you want to reduce the noise by redesign, repair, or insulate the equipment. In a low light area, use a headlamp, flashlight, or temporary light. Long-term, you want to upgrade the lighting or install additional fixtures. So it's pretty simple things, but they reduce those little risks that we're taking, and it helps you raise your bar of your safety culture. Let's see here. So observation steps. So this is kind of how the process works real quick. There's an introductory conversation, make contact. You don't want to be hiding in the bushes watching somebody just say, mind if I observe you? Explain what the process is. CBI means critical behavior index. So I'll show you on the next slide when we look at an observation form. I can kind of show you what that looks like. You always want to say no name, no blame. We don't write anybody's name that's being observed on the form. Because it's not about who's getting observed. It's about the actual act. It's about the behavior. It's not about singling people out. Ask what the task is. If there's any specific risks, you do your observation. So the first thing you're looking at is kind of the environment. You want to be in a safe place yourself. And then the next thing, you're going to actually be watching the behavior, how the person's interacting with the equipment, with the task that they're doing. You mark any data on the sheet. And then you want to give feedback on safe behaviors, feedback on at-risk behaviors, and then get the employee input on what can be done to fix it, what would make it better, what would make it easier. A lot of times this is a good chance for the person you're observing even to vent. If they've had a day that kind of sucked, don't hurt you to listen to that and kind of have some empathy on them. So, and we've got some of our best and biggest improvements project-wise from these observations. So, the people that work with the equipment every day usually have a pretty good idea how to fix it. So it's a good chance to capture that. Let's see, here's a quick view of what our observation form looks like. Date, number of workers observed, weather condition, introductory conversation, no name, no blame. If you just follow right down the sheet, we've got it set up so you can ask observed, what are you working on? Is there any risk to it? A lot of times when they tell you what the risks are, you can see that they've mitigated the risks. So you're actually indirectly teaching people to mitigate risks as they find them. And so this is just a reinforcement of that also. You can see we've got a place for the schedule over on the right. Risk of the day, that's if there's any risky tasks going on that day. And then the name of the observer, we give credit to people for doing observations. We'll recognize them at the end of the month and the end of the year, that sort of thing. So we do have that on there. So here's a good example of some behaviors. Who are you observing? This is kind of what area they're working in. I got that backwards. This is where they're working on the right, obviously, and this is who. So this is a try to keep it general enough so that you'll know what area they're working in, but not know who it was. A pretty small site here, so you could guess, but it just hasn't been an issue. And then you look at these behaviors. So you can look at body position, which is your line of fire, where you're placing your body when you're doing the work, pinch points, ascending, descending. You got the body use, the ergonomics of the job, different criteria for the tools and equipment, procedures. You evaluate the PPE for the job, the environment working in, the walking working surfaces. As a side note, walking working surfaces has been our #1 at risk for probably 4 years, and we are definitely making improvements on them. It's just that as people start to find this stuff, they accept less risks, and that's a good thing. So, and then you got the last one for driving, filling out your checklist, seatbelt, that sort of thing. As a side note, any office workers, some of our offices for Nurion, I think BASF also, they have observation programs and they observe maybe 8 or 10 behaviors. Sometimes the injury rate in offices kind of creeps up there because you're not suspecting to encounter any type of a risk. So they do a lot of observations in offices, not as many as in a production environment, but they still have observation programs in the Nurion office buildings. So it's just a different list of behaviors you're looking for. The last thing on this is, and probably the most important part, is the comments. You have a while was because, or you have a while was because solution and tried. So for example, while pulling sample was wearing face shield because sample material was hot. It would be that simple. Why it's important to write that down is so you can give good feedback to the person you're observing. Same way with the risk, while pulling sample was not wearing rain jacket because he forgot it in the shack. Solution, stop and get your rain jacket. Solution, tried, yes or no. This is identified places we can hang up a hanger for splash protection at a sampling point. A lot of times we go back to hearing protection. There's certain parts of the building that we should just keep hearing protection at, or we should just keep nitrile gloves at. So having these comments turned in by operators has been pretty invaluable as to guiding us on where the issues were going to be at that we needed to address. And then the last you see on the bottom here, this comments, that's a good chance for people to, we don't have a suggestion box here. And sometimes people have a great idea to make something better, but ain't going to make it safer. It ain't going to make it, it's not going to do that. It just makes their job better. This is a good chance to capture that sort of thing also. And then I guess as a note, he's tried yes or no. That's an important thing because you want to see that your observation process is actually impacting behaviors. So you want to see that if we had a discussion about wearing a raincoat, yeah, you're right, I should put my raincoat on, that sort of thing. So we do track that, but it's really important. This process isn't designed for me to go out and argue with you and tell you got to wear your raincoat. This is to make you question whether you should have your raincoat on. Tom's not your boss, Tom's just your coworker. Doesn't want you to get splashed with anything. Hey man, I would wear my raincoat if I was doing that, don't want to get anything on. So that way, the more you think about it, there was a fella probably 10 years ago when this process started at our plant, never wore a seatbelt on the forklift. And after he'd done 2 or 3 observations of saying, hey, man, maybe you should have your seatbelt on. The next time he got on a forklift, he thought, you know what, I guess I better put my seatbelt on. So it does change the observer's behavior just as much as the person being observed. So there's a lot of really good things there with that. So that's what our observation form looks like. I'm going to give you just a little bit of our background, where we came from, and give you a few tips on how we've sustained our successes, what's worked, what's kind of been important for us to finish it up. And it's difficult not being able to see anybody I'm talking to. I'm not used to that at all. And I would have much rather be there like everybody in person. So I apologize if I rambled through a lot of this. And I know everybody's at a different place with it, so I wasn't sure what to what to really focus on. So tried to catch a little bit of everything. So our background, we started in 2006 doing BBS, and it stalled out and got stagnant in 2014. 2015, they asked me to be the part-time facilitator. One of our gaps was there were too many details kind of falling through the cracks. So you kind of see 2014, that was kind of our data. That's the kind of stuff we kept track of. That was in 2016. It was kind of an up and down year. 2017, we did a big revamp, boosted everything out. And if you remember, that slide for 5 years was 2019. So 2017, our first aids kind of spiked a little bit if you look back at those numbers. So they sent me to some facilitator training. We wrote a policy. I'm not a policy guy. I'm not a flow diagram guy, any of that stuff. I think that's crazy. But they sold me on it. So I went through that whole rigmarole. And so we did this big revamp and started tracking things, started really communicating our data better, started trying to interpret our data, see what it all meant. And you can kind of see how we began to improve. We set goals, kind of track things, found a different way to report out, put the thermometer here because that's a fun way to gauge things. And then we started communicating the barriers that people were turning, that we were fixing. 2019, we kind of got a little more clever. I learned a little bit more about Excel. And so we have some better charts. But we started meeting our goals. People started to see and think, hey, things are working. I got really handy with these spaceships on a graph. That's how we kind of showed our progress. The next year, we got even better. I was on the yellow team, by the way, so my horse did win this year. So you can see that we slowly raised the bar, and we started, instead of trying to do so many observations, we lowered our target and started focusing on the quality of the observations, trying to make sure we had safe comments and at-risk comments. Even if you saw no at-risk, we wouldn't have at least a safe comment. We started doing more coached observations. And then it's really paid off for the shutdown. Like I said, I have really good shutdown data to share if anybody is interested in that. But then in 2021, we did our final, we did a kind of a logo change, name change, and we had probably $500,000 in projects that got approved for a new super stacker, a new bulk bag addition, a new formaldehyde scrubber, a lot of really big things. And I think that we have a managing committee here because we have two different parent companies, and I think that they're a lot more willing to spend money because they see that the process here is working, that it's embedded, that the ideas are coming up from the shop floor. And here it's a shop floor driven process. I mean, I can go argue with the top guy about something and have good clout because we're reasonable, but we have good data to back up the things we're saying, but we also have great support from the top. So this is kind of our 21 spot. This is where we're at right now. And this data, we get it communicated in quarterly meetings to the whole site. So we do a lot of things with the data. So that's kind of a really quick walkthrough of where we're at, where we came from. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is why this has worked for us, and then a couple what's important things. Full-time facilitator thing. I feel like anybody could do my job because I just have time to do the things, to pay attention to detail, to follow up on the things that come up, to let me go lobby for that are important, to be consistent, to have somebody on days that's able to go in. Here we have these swing shifts, so you're on nights for 2 weeks at a time. So it allows us really consistent representation, allows to be a shop floor guy that's visible, getting feedback. Lets the employees on the committee. Let's just do the continuous improvement thing because there's always somebody working forward on it. Let's the consistent training. We had 2 or 3 different people do the training, and that always gets to where everybody's got a little different slant on it. So it allows us to be really consistent with training and communication. Some other things, we have barrier removal teams so that bigger project like the phase 1 bagger, the really expensive projects where we get a couple operators, we get an engineer, we get a maintenance representative, and we can get the right people in the room to actually solve the big problems. And a lot of times in the past, we've had an engineer solve a problem and the operators didn't buy into the solution, or wasn't the solution that didn't quite solve the problems. This way we get plenty of employee input. That way when the solutions happen, they are, if they're not the right ones, nobody can argue because everybody's kind of has a consensus on what we're doing. A really great support from our site leadership team. They rotate through the meetings. We do some development for team members. We get to go to best practice visits. We get to do some training things there. Pretty structured, detailed responsibilities. And then we review people's responsibilities and requirements to be on the BBS team here. And then some other things. Observation schedule is a big deal. The ongoing training, best practice visits, like I said, and then it's really important to recognize observers, observees, successes, kind of a synopsis for what's important. The shop floor ownership and the management support, no name, no blame. Keep everything evolving, communicate, acknowledge and address conditions, not just behaviors, communicate, celebrate, and publicize success, involve employees in the solutions, and it takes time. Nothing changes overnight. That's the hardest thing to tell an operator, that they can't fix something right away. And every site's different. So everything I said may not work at your site, but there's a good chance something I said will. And then there's a really good chance that you guys have great ideas that we can share and get everybody up, raise the bar on everything. That's really all that I had to say. So if there's any questions or comments, only nice comments, any mean comments have to be private. That's what I have there. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
If anybody has anything right now, if you want to stick it in the chat box. Again, I did want to mention that the people that logged in using the link that I apparently sent from Microsoft from email last night, you are showing up on my end with my name beside you. So if you see that you're showing up that way, would you please take a minute in the chat function and type your name, who it actually is, for the sake of doing the drawings for the attendance. I don't want anybody to miss out on that opportunity. I had nine people showing up under my name, and I'm still missing 4 names. So sorry for any confusion with that, but you only need to do that if you look at your stuff and it says Deb Katzenmeyer next to it. All right, and I'm going to take back sharing. Bear with me a moment here. There we go. All right. Can everybody see my screen? Tom, can you see my screen?
Yes, I
Okay.
can.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, just wrapping up, I'll do the drawing after the meeting, so please be sure you've made sure I know you were here. I will get all this information together. I am actually recuperating from a little hand surgery I had to have over the break. So I am just doing a couple hours each day. So bear with me. I hope to get that to you by the end of the week. Always feel free to send me emails with any questions or comments. And you also, my phone number is on there as well. I did mention next month's meeting is February 8th, and that will be effective communication, turning ditch diggers into bridge builders. And that'll be Divall safety. And for those of you that have been around long enough, I think in 2017, they came, Wiley Davidson, and we had an event at Apollo Career Center where he talked about safe for all the right reasons. So they do a great job presenting their stuff to us. So I'm excited to hear them speak. I hope you are too. All right, with all of that, I hope that you are all off to a great start for your new year, and look forward to seeing you all next month. And keep an eye out in your email for any information that I have to share for Safety Council. Everybody take care. Thanks. I'm going to leave this open for a little bit so people can